Hi, my name is Misha Calvert, and this is Film on Tape, an audio library of everything that I have learned as a filmmaker. I really hope that this is helpful to you in some way. And if it is, feel free to check out my website, mishacalvert.com. You can see my writing and directing there, and you can also sign up for very occasional emails that I send. All right, on to the show. Today, I'm going to talk about a very cool subject, which is where to find female and non-binary crew for your films. I'm going to tell you the most efficient ways to find them and hire them for your film projects. But first, I'm going to tell you why you should consider hiring female and non-binary film crew on your sets. There's a number of really compelling reasons, and there's reasons for those reasons that have to do with a lot of how women and non-binary folks are socialized versus how men are socialized. Now, obviously, men have been the dominant gender in filmmaking for quite a long time, not forever. In the very beginning, women actually were doing a lot of filmmaking before filmmaking was such a profitable medium, and particularly when men were away during World War I. But once it became a huge industry commercially, that's when women were kind of kicked out of their posts as the people running the filmmaking industry. So initially, women had a very strong foothold in the craft of filmmaking, and now we're finally seeing that women and non-binary folks are coming back to it. However, it's still hard to get hired as a non-male on sets. It is harder to get hired. People generally are more willing to trust a man on set than they are a non-male. And so that's kind of the impetus for this episode, because you may be in your own bubble of loving to work with women and non-binary folks, and this may be preaching to the choir, but so many people out there, and I've noticed it more in LA than in New York, they're still hesitant to hire non-males. And that sucks. The second reason to hire women and non-binary is that because people don't want to hire women, the bar for entry is a lot higher. For us to even be considered for a job, we generally need to be more accomplished and be better at our jobs than males. So because the bar is higher, our competency is higher. We're not able to make as many mistakes. Otherwise, we get kicked off the set, we get fired, we don't get asked back. So we're just expected to perform better in general. I'm remembering a striking statistic about doctors and surgeons, and female surgeons in particular, who have a 20% lower death rate after surgery for their patients. That is extraordinary to me. And yet there's that kind of joke / thought experiment about a doctor, and then you get to the end of it and you're like, so I bet you thought the doctor was a man, huh? Because when we think of doctors, we think of men, and when we think of film crew, if I told you to picture a film crew right now, a lot of you are going to picture an all-male film crew in like black jeans and, maybe smoking cigarettes, little beanies, teeny wee little beanies. So there's this stereotype that film crew equals male. And I'm really wanting to suggest that if you start to populate your imagination and your reality of your film sets with more women and non-males, then you're going to get better results. One other really great reason to have more female and non-binary folks in your films, both in front of the camera and behind it, is that film festivals are more and more not only rewarding gender diversity, but mandating it. As you may know, the Oscars has started to adopt some diversity standards to encourage people to look for ways to expand the diversity for their films. The making of the films, that includes racial diversity as well as gender diversity and other unrepresented categories like cognitive or physical disabilities, deaf, etc. So this is really, really good. And it frustrates me so much when people get mad about these standards. They exist for a reason, not because it's the right thing to do, which it is. They exist because there is an unconscious bias in the majority of people in the industry that the underrepresented communities will not be as good as men, as, well, white men, really. And that's just not true. And I mean, you all probably know what I'm talking about, but also if you're not nurturing talent from the beginning, from the early stages of their career, they're not given chances to fail. They're not given chances to learn. So people that might be shoulder to shoulder with some of the greats who are not white men, those people are not able to practice their craft or their skill set as crew to even be able to excel because they're not hired at the same rate. And it's really tough to argue unconscious bias. Why? Because most people are unconscious of it. But if you start to look at the studies that have been done, it's really startling, it's really sobering. And also the studies about how much better, in general, people who have to work harder for those jobs are at those jobs. So all things being equal, they are usually the better hire. So this episode is about women and non-binary folks, so I'm going to stick to that. But there's a whole lot more we could say about racial diversity on sets and certainly in front of the camera as well, and disabilities and people with cognitive or physical different abilities and how they are underrepresented as well. Can I jump in for 1 second and just tell you that I love coaching people? I've been doing it for over a decade, working with high net worths, executives, a lot of actors, a lot of writer-directors, people looking to activate their creativity. I freaking love it. The thing that I like most about it is that we really, really get results, whether that's bringing in 5 or 6 figures more of income, if it's getting signed by a manager or an agent, if it's booking a Broadway show. I have helped my clients do all of these things. You can find out more at clubvermilion.com, or you can always send me an email at info@clubvermilion.com. I would love to speak to you on the phone about it. You can sign up for a free call. So wherever you want to get to, I would love to help you get there. Okay, back to the show. All right. Let's cut to the chase. Where to find female and non-binary crew. My first piece of advice is to not ask your friends. This would be a gender-neutral statement. When you're looking to crew up, I just find again and again asking your friends is asking for trouble. Why? Because they probably don't really want to help you. They may be good at the job that you want to hire them for, but they're probably not looking. They're probably busy. And so they're doing you a favor for what is, frankly, a really hard job. Whatever the job in film is, it's going to be hard. Every job is hard. Even the quote, smaller roles like being a PA. Being a PA is really hard. So I just find that again and again, it seems like a good idea, but asking your friends is actually not a good idea. Not for crew, maybe for creative team, but that's different. So I like to go where people are hungry. Go to the places where people are actually looking for jobs. They're looking for work. And then from there, they're looking for what you're giving. Those are the people that you want to pull from. They're hungry, right? So where are those places? Well, regardless of gender, I find again and again, Mandy is a great hiring pool. I inevitably find at least a couple of candidates off of Mandy that are fantastic. I hire off of there every single project, at least one role. And usually it's a pretty important role. For this last film that I directed earlier this year, I hired our editor and I hired our sound person. And our sound guy was fantastic. He had been on many, many network TV shows. And they go on to Mandy to find more interesting indie films. Oh, also our producers were from Mandy. Now, none of those 3 roles were women, which I am sad about. But when I did Pink Flags with the Spielbergs, I found our incredible production designer, Lindsay Starr-Smith, off of Mandy. And we were so lucky to have her. She just absolutely killed it and was head and shoulders above the other candidates, even though many of those other candidates on Mandy were like pretty much top notch. But I was just so blown away by her work. And every single time I post on Mandy, there's usually a couple female and non-binary folks there that are just really, really great. So Mandy, number 1. Number 2, I love Media Mavens. I do. I love it. I subscribe. It's a Google listserv that you can sign up for. You have to get approved, but I don't know what their latest numbers are, but last time I checked, it was 10,000 members of female non-binary. And that's New York and LA. They have one list for each, or you can post to both cities at once. And you send an email in with your job listing, and then it goes out to the whole membership. So you have to be really specific about what your pay rate is, what the job is, how to apply for the job. But every time I post on Media Mavens, I get hundreds of responses, hundreds. So I really like Media Mavens. And I want to say, too, that for both Media Mavens and Mandy, you cannot specify that you're looking to hire a specific gender. You can't even say women encouraged to apply or non-binary encouraged to apply, because that shows bias and favoritism in the hiring process. So if you want to indicate the vibes that your project is going to have, what you can simply say is it's a female-driven team for this movie that is about a woman's experience as she navigates da-da-da-da. So you just say, you speak about yourself. It's not about the candidates. It's about the existing team that's in place and what the film or the project is about. And that will signal to folks kind of what to expect if they were to sign on. Having said that, I've done that on Mandy, where I didn't say women encouraged to apply. I just said it's a female creative team, and the narrative is about uses a female gaze to investigate, mental health. And I remember one person got really angry with me. He's like, "Why do you think it's important to say that it's a female creative team? Men are just as good at da-da-da. What, are you ruling it out for men to apply?" And just really took it like to the extreme. Because first of all, no, I'm never ruling out to work with men. I love working with men, and they're great. That's not what we're talking about here. I was simply describing that I was simply stating that there were women involved, and this person got very angry. So sometimes people get a bit touchy, and I've seen on Media Mavens that if you say women encouraged to apply, that can get it won't get approved, or it'll get flamed even worse. So try not to do that. The third place that I love, and I am a paid pro member of this site, is Pano, P-A-N-O, the Pano Network. Used to be, I think, female filmmakers when it was a Facebook group in New York, and I just love it. I know both of the founders of it, and they're doing a great job running it. It's a huge network. I think 5,000 people, maybe more. I don't want to get that wrong, but they're doing a wonderful job with this community of females and non-binary folks, and there's so much going on with Pano, and you can post on their job forum and find a lot of really, really great women. A lot of my friends are part of Pano, so I recommend joining if you can and seeing what posting for the membership does for you. The fourth place that I know to find crew is not really accessible to indie filmmakers. It's called Film Fatales, and full disclosure, I just really wish they would take me in. I don't think I meet their requirements, but it's sort of like the super cool kid club at school, and you're like, oh man, why don't they like me? Why don't they want to hang out? But I think I just literally don't meet the requirements. I think you have to have directed an episode of television or a feature film that played at a big festival. I actually don't know, but I know that I'm not quite there yet. So Film Fatales, I wish I was a member. I'm adding it to this list because I'm an aspiring Film Fatale. And maybe one of them will hear this episode and decide to take me in. Because I would love to hire from that pool. Those are the really well-established female and non-male crew, directors, writers, producers. I just can't wait to get further in my career and be rubbing shoulders with the top women in Hollywood. I'm really excited about that. So let's get into some of the data behind why it's really good to try to work with women. This isn't strictly film industry-based data, and also you could easily look this up, but I will drop some studies that have been done and where they were published to give you an idea of just how much women overperform in key metrics that are really helpful when you're trying to get a film made, be a leader, run a business, run a film set, or get your films out there. So the first comes from Warwick Business School that did a study on female investors, and they found that with traders, so people who are trading in the stock market, they compared men and they compared women. And I mean, generally speaking, you're not going to make that much money if you're trading individual stocks. If you really go all in, you may have some success there. But in general, this is off topic, but in general, it's best to invest in the market as a whole. But for people who are day trading, who are doing actual stock picking, they found that men generally reduced their earnings by 2.65%. And women reduced their earnings by 1.72%. So that's a loss. We're talking about men losing 2.65% of the money that they were trading versus women only losing 1.72% of the money they were trading. There's other studies on this about why women make great investors and, in fact, generally speaking, better investors, which stands in stark contrast to the amount of women who are actually trusted with money when, for instance, in venture capital, 2% of VC goes to funds that are led by women. So I'm making a point on this because the societal expectation is that women are not good with money, and yet the data shows that actually in multiple studies and in multiple ways, women are better investors than men. Another study done by an organization called Leadership Circle, which surveyed 84,000 business leaders, and they found that overall, women had higher levels of effectiveness and competency. And here's a funny one, lower emotional reactivity. So female leaders, higher on effectiveness and competency, and lower on reactivity. Whereas men, male leaders, tended towards overconfidence and overactivity. Both of these were published in Forbes, so that's where I initially found them. There was another thing that the Leadership Circle studied, which was that businesses that had at least 30% female leadership were 12 times more likely to be in the top percent of financial performance. And lastly, the final study that I'm going to cite is my own. I had my team do a meta-study with information that was readily available on IMDb and the internet, looking at the top 100 grossing films every year from 2017 to 2023. So 5 years of films of the top 100 grossing films. It looked at male versus female directors, and it looked at how much was spent on the films versus how much those films delivered in profit. I genuinely did not know the answer to this which gender would make more profitable films. My assumption was males, because men are given more opportunities and they are entrusted with bigger budgets. In fact, female-directed films are 4% more likely to be profitable at the box office per dollar budget. When you look at how much it costs to make it versus how much it brought in the box office, female films are more profitable. If anyone wants to see this meta study, I will happily share it. I'm quite proud of it. It took a really long time. But hopefully this data is a little shocking. Hopefully it's sobering, and hopefully it inspires you to trust women with money, expect female-directed films to do better, and inspire you to feel safe in the hands of female leadership, because the math and the science is that female leaders, at least in these studies, outperform male leaders. So, in summary, highly recommend hiring female and non-binary crew members. They're given less chances. They generally work harder. They create a harmonious and work-driven environment more than an ego-driven environment. And not only is it the right thing to do, but in the indie film world, you're probably going to be acknowledged and perhaps even rewarded for including that gender diversity. So all around good idea. And I look forward to hearing about your hires for female and non-binary folks. And feel free to drop me a DM. Tell me all about it. Thank you so much for listening to Film on Tape. I really hope that it was helpful to you in some way. And if so, please feel free to leave a 5-star review so that other people know this is a good podcast. If you want to check out my work as a writer-director, you can see it at www.mishacalvert.com or drop me a DM. The best way to get a hold of me is on Instagram at Misha Calvert. See you next time.